Welcome to this explainer. Today we're unpacking a seriously provocative argument from a fascinating text called The Sovereignty of Self, Transcending the Victimhood Economy. Now, whether you completely agree with the author's premise or totally disagree with it, the concepts laid out in this source material give us a really intense lens for looking at modern human behavior. We're going to break down exactly what this author means by a victimhood economy and how it supposedly operates.
All right, let's jump right into this striking claim. The author is basically arguing that modern society doesn't just tolerate a victim mentality, it actually reveres it. The text suggests we're actively building a culture where playing the victim card is literally praised and rewarded. It's a bold assertion for sure, and it really sets the stage for a critical look at exactly how our culture incentivizes certain behaviors.
To make sense of all this, we're going to map out the argument in 4 stages. First, defining the victimhood economy. Second, the psychology of victimhood. Third, profiting from dependency. And finally, reclaiming self-reliance.
Okay, Section 1. The victimhood economy defined. What exactly is this victimhood economy? Well, the author describes it as a massive societal framework. The core argument here is that both public and private sectors are heavily built around generating maximum profits by exploiting people who feel helpless, vulnerable, and just lack a clear direction in life. The big takeaway from the text is that dependency isn't just some unfortunate accident, it's a highly lucrative commodity.
This quote right here really hits the nail on the head regarding the author's view of our culture. The text paints this picture of a society where rational adults are genuinely intimidated by a growing culture of blame shifting. According to the source, the people who refuse to take responsibility and just constantly complain are the ones driving the narrative, leaving the mature, rational folks actually afraid to speak out against them.
Moving on to Section 2, The Psychology of Victimhood.
The text is pretty blunt about this next part. It argues that we are our own worst enemies. We actively hold on to these self-limiting beliefs. The idea is that people become self-deprecating, and they play the victim card, essentially doing everything they can to stay in that mentality. Why? Because actually escaping it means confronting some pretty uncomfortable truths about ourselves.
The author lays out this really stark psychological contrast. On one hand, you have the hard path. That means putting in the effort, working hard, and stepping way outside your comfort zone. But then you have the easy path, where people realize it's way simpler to just show vulnerability and gain sympathy than to actually put in the work to improve their lives. It's a harsh critique, but the source suggests that staying comfortable and doing nothing is the path of least resistance we naturally default to.
All right, Section 3, profiting from dependency.
Now, the text maps out this entire pipeline of exploitation, and it's kind of like a trap. It starts when an individual feels hopeless. Because they feel that way, the author claims they become a boon to society, immediately targeted by established corporate frameworks. This leads them straight into a perpetual cycle of dependency, whether it's their health, their jobs, or their finances. Ultimately, the system convinces them there's no hope unless they just keep consuming and paying forever.
So, who's actually cashing in on this? The source doesn't pull any punches here. They point straight at 6 massive sectors: media, politics, the healthcare system, religion, movies, and sports. The argument is that the systems within all of these massive industries are fundamentally designed to squeeze maximum benefits from a victimhood mentality. They literally rely on a dependent populace to keep the cash flowing. The real kicker here is the target demographic. These sectors allegedly prey on what the author calls drifters, people who casually consume information and fundamentally don't believe they have control over their own lives. If you lack self-control and aren't thinking for yourself, the text argues that you are the absolute ideal, most profitable consumer for this economy.
Which brings us to our final part, Section 4, Reclaiming Self-Reliance. Based on everything we've covered, the text basically contrasts 2 totally different mindsets. First up is the victim, or the consumer. This is the drifter who just accepts whatever the majority is doing. Conversely, you have the author's ideal state, the sovereign individual. This is someone who demands clear direction from themselves. They think critically, they question the norms, they take absolute responsibility, and they flat out refuse to be swept away by whatever the crowd is doing.
And here is where the text issues a really strong warning. Basically, if you aren't that critical thinker, you're doomed to an economic trap. You're going to stay in this exhausting state of earning money just to buy things you don't even need, purely because the system convinced you that you had to have them. The author wraps up this whole argument with a pretty sobering thought. If you stay stuck in this endless cycle of dependency and mindless consumption, you'll reach the end of your life only to spend all your money trying to fix the things, your health, your mind, your relationships, that you completely neglected when you actually had the time to work on them.
So, as we wrap up this explainer, I want to leave you with a thought straight from the author's thesis. It's a great prompt for some self-reflection. Regardless of whether you totally agree with this worldview, it's worth asking, where in your own life, your media habits, your finances, your routines, are you simply following the crowd? Are you thinking critically, or are you actively participating in the very economy we just deconstructed? Thanks so much for joining me today, and keep questioning the world around you.